I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Good morning, adjudicators, honorable opponents, and all of everyone present here. Today, I'm here to oppose this motion in post-conflict, e.g., post-civil war, regime change, colonialism. This House believes that history textbooks should focus on teaching bottom-up historiography rather than top-down historiography. Ladies and gentlemen, when a country emerges from civil war, colonialism oppression, and or political violence, the greatest challenge is not simply rebuilding infrastructure. The real challenge is rebuilding trust. Trust between communities, trust towards institutions, and trust towards the idea that people with different backgrounds can still live together as one nation. That is why history education becomes extremely important in post-conflict societies. Today, the government wants history textbooks to prioritize bottom-up historiography by focusing on grassroots and local narratives that believe this creates representation and justice. But we believe that is fragile post-conflict societies. Prioritizing fragmented narrative too early is dangerous because education in that moment should first create unity, stability, and institutional trust. Therefore, we firmly believe that post-conflict history textbook should prioritize top-down historiography. Today, I will bring two main arguments. First, while top-down historiography is necessary for nation cohesion. And the second is why it strengthens institutional legitimacy and prevent future conflict. Ladies and gentlemen, the government claims that bottom-up history empowers merchant communities, but they ignore important reality in post-conflict societies. Those communities were often fighting each other. Grassroots narratives are usually tied to trauma, revenge, and competing claims of victimhood. One group teaches that were the betrayed, another teaches that they were oppressed, while another glorifies resistance against another communities. If all of these narratives are immediately placed into national textbooks, schools stop becoming space for reconciliation. Instead, they become space where historicity is reproduced for the next generation. The government romanticizes multiple perspectives, but they fail to explain what happens when those perspectives completely contradict one another, whose suffering becomes central, whose subversion becomes official, and who feels excluded afterward. Their model risks creating competition over historical legitimacy instead of national unity. Ladies and gentlemen, now we're going to my first argument. After conflict, the greatest danger facing a country is fragmentation. People no longer see themselves as citizens of one nation. They identify themselves based on ethnic, religion, tribe, or militia groups. This is why top-down historiography is necessary. A top-down approach focuses on shared national identity. It teaches students about peace agreements, constitutional rebuilding, national leadership, and collective recovery. Why is important? Because before citizens can peacefully debate history, they must first believe they belong to the same country. Top-down historiography creates a common national narrative strong enough to unite people during recovery. The government may call this oversimplification, but in post-conflict societies, simplification can be necessary for survival. Because when students grow up only hearing narrative created around local suffering and division, they inherit resentment before they inherit national identity. And deliver memory eventually create divided societies. Top-down historiography helps interrupt this cycle by giving citizens one shared foundation to rebuild peace together. And now we're going to my second argument. Post-conflict states are usually extreme fragile, counters weak, government lack legitimacy, and violence often still exists beneath surface. In this situation, the state desperately needs citizens to trust institutions again. Top-down historiography helps building this trust because it explains how peace people negotiate, why laws matter, and why institutions are necessary to prevent another collapse into violence. It teaches students that disagreements should be resolved through constitution, elections, and courts, not through grievance or armed resistance. This is extremely important because of school immediately prioritize bottom-up narrative focused on distrust toward authority and resistance against institutions. Students may become skeptical of the very system trying to maintain peace. And once citizens stop believing in institutions, they return to state loyalty instead of national unity. That is how conflict begins again. The top-down historiography therefore acts as a stabilizing mechanism. It gives the government enough legitimacy to maintain order while society slowly heals. Ladies and gentlemen, the government believes that history textbooks should immediately prioritizing combating grassroots narrative in societies that are still fragile and divided. But post-conflict education is not only about representation, it's also about survival. In moments where peace is still unstable, the responsibility of education is to rebuild trust, strengthen institutions, and create a shared national identity. Top-down historiography provides the stability and cohesion necessary for a country to recover from conflict. And for those reasons, I proudly oppose this motion. In post-conflict states, e.g. post-Civil War, regime change, colonialism, this House believes that history textbooks should focus on teaching bottom-up historiography rather than top-down historiography. Thank you.